Hello, I am Stephanie Amaya. I am currently the principal at Adamson High School, but I was formerly the principal at John Ely Bryan Elementary and John Ireland Elementary, which is now the Sylvia Mendez Crew Leadership Academy. I'll be talking about my experiences both at John Ely Bryan and John Ireland because that's where that's where my work was for the Principal Impact Collaborative projects. So I'll be talking about novel engineering, and I'll be talking about expeditionary learning and the design thinking process. So our design thinking process through PIC began with interviews. The definition of what our problem was, creating and ideating what solutions we were going to do and have, and creating prototypes, and then bringing that to scale. So the first thing that I did at both schools during my principalships there is created interviews. So that was for teachers, that was for students, and that was for community members, previous teachers, parents, anyone that worked with our community in order to figure out what we needed to be paying attention to and addressing our focus to the most. So within those interviews, we found that students really wanted and urged for reading instruction to be very engaging. And then teachers wanted to increase the engagement of our students, especially our struggling readers. So what did that look like? We looked at our data and see if our data really matched that empathy interview. We also looked at what was working already. What were the successes that were happening? Found that math data was highly successful at both schools, because it was very hands-on. Students were really able to touch and see and interact with math in a different way than they were with reading. So how could we mirror reading in order for this to be more active as well for our students? We looked at our student survey data, we looked at our teacher data, and then we figured out, okay, why do we really need to do something like this? And then created that vision with the why, and then what does it look like as well. Additionally, we then started looking at a smaller group of people in order to help us figure out how could we or how might we make reading more engaging and more fun. We looked at different thematic units, we looked at building models, dioramas, projects, plays, and we ended up with 2 models. At John Ireland, we ended up with expeditionary learning, and at John Ely Bryan, we looked at novel engineering. They're both very similar programs where reading is the focus through novels, through hands-on learning, through books, and actionable outcomes that students really engage in. And both programs have a lot of soft skill components within them as well. We also looked at how were we going to do this, and that was through their prototypes. So what did that actually look like in our classroom? Thematic lesson planning, supported lesson planning, starting in small classrooms or starting small with 2 to 3 classrooms, starting in K2 or 3-5. What would that look like? And then seeing it in action by attending conferences, reading successful implementation, really connecting with people that had already done the work in order for us to see if it was something that would actually fit at our school. So with with expeditionary learning, the whole idea behind expeditionary learning is that we are crew, not passengers. That means that everyone has a piece of that puzzle. Everyone is in the work. It's not coming from only our students. It's not coming from only our teachers. It's not coming from our admin. Everyone is involved in the process. We were able to go through a conference that really helped solidify that understanding and see it in action and see the passion behind expeditionary learning, which really fueled a fire for our teachers and their excitement to implement as well. At John Ely Bryan, we looked at novel engineering, and we looked at how it would enhance reading comprehension by relating the characters to the students. We looked at what that engineering process would look like, so the text would be more realistic for the students to create solutions that had visible outcomes, and how it engaged all learners. So students that struggled with language arts had a new and a deeper way to demonstrate comprehension because it was more hands-on, and how it was going to build 24 literacy skills, because 21st sensory skills, because students were collaborating, they were working together as teams, they were really able to work together in order for them to communicate and learn from each other, not only from our teachers. So the biggest question that we had at both of those schools was, how were we going to pay for this? The idea was great, but how were we actually going to get the funding in order to support the thinking, the curriculum, the materials, in order for us to really help create a strong programming? So what we did was we applied for the Office of Innovation and Transformation. We had a $50,000 grant application for an innovation engine grant, where we applied for a piloting idea. We had design team members and their skills, and then we looked at what the budget needs were going to be in order for them to be realistic in how we would spend that $50,000. We were able to get that grant in order to send our teachers to conferences, to buy books, and to provide opportunities for teachers to create the curriculum, translate the curriculum, and really dig down deep into what that would look like in the classroom. From there, we were able to apply to the $350,000 innovation grant, which had a written round review, which had an instructional plan, an SEL plan, the action plan for implementation, our budget needs, and the current work we were doing. We had an interview round where the committee presented, and we had a group interview, and then we had a superintendent's review panel. So through those two components, along with a library grant and a garden grant, we were really able to meet the needs of both our teachers, our students, and our community, to have people invested by helping grow things and figuring out that, like, one of our needs of our communities through the books that we were reading was that we needed more access to local foods and fruits and vegetables in a food apartheid. And so then we got more people to join in and to participate in our garden based on that. At John Neely Bryan with Novel Engineering, we applied for the $350,000 innovation grant. And that really went through the same process. And we were able to have a funding for design thinking materials, for makerspace materials, which really helped push our curriculum in order to buy more books as well, and have students more engaged in learning. So when we applied at John Neely Bryan, we were part of Public School Choice 7.0, which created a letter, which had 52 applicants submit a letter of intent. 31 proposals were ultimately submitted. There were 20 interviews that moved into that round, and then finally 14 schools were selected to be under recommendation. And so it was something that, you know, had a lot of work and a lot of time for a committee in order to be able to design what instruction would really look like in both of those components, in both of those spaces. We began the pilot by really making sure that we had vision for our projects. So at John Neely Bryan, we were learning together to change the future. So really making sure that we were all invested. How were we going to create reading more hands-on? How would it look like in pre-K? By building Legos, by building fun games. How would we connect Esperanza Rising to the human rights document in order for them to see about immigration? How would we combine nonfiction articles from News ELA to the books in order for our students to really figure out, like, hey, this is not only happening in Esperanza Rising, it's also happening today at our borders. And then also the one and only Ivan, really connecting with our students to animal advocacy. And so it was really exciting for our students to do this at different grade levels and to really be involved in having a voice at a large scale. At John Neely Bryan, we looked at novel engineering. And so our visioning was really to build learning experiences where our students had online and hands-on learning, and how that would look differently to really solve real world problems. It's very similar to the design process where identifying the problem, looking at the scope of the problem and designing the solution, looking at test solutions and getting feedback, improving those solutions, and then sharing and cultivating activity through collaborative spaces in order to integrate engineering and literacy at the elementary level. For novel and for expeditionary learning, the curriculum connection was really through how do we create that vocabulary? How do we buy relevant text for our students? How do we build those soft skills for our students to support each other? How do we build annotation within something that was really engaging for our students to join in? And then what did it look like as we moved into virtual that year for the first time during the initiation of COVID? So that was a challenge because not only were we piloting a new system, but we also did it during COVID. And then additionally, coming into COVID in person for the first year, what did that look like for our students? For novel engineering as a curriculum connection. So we did a lot of cross-curricular integration with, the arts, mathematics, and of course, literature in order for our students, even at the pre-K level, to build an understanding around literacy at a very highly engaging way because they were connecting it across multiple academic areas. So when we looked at the implementation of novel engineering, the summer of 2020, there were not a lot of schools implementing it, nor nobody was implementing at that point at this scale. And then we had a few implementations of piloting classrooms, piloting 1 in 3-5, 1 in K2, but it really took off when we created a partnership with our Dallas ISD reading department after our application for a Cool School Summer program, which led to 78 schools participating in novel engineering through the program. We had professional development for our teachers in guided reading. We had it in in-class support for and modeling for guided reading. And then we had novel engineering training for our district as well. Some of the challenges were really making sure that we had effective systems and student accountability in stations in order for our teachers to provide small group instruction and small group support. We really had to dive deep into text with our students while their reading levels were different, and then balancing the support for on-grade level text and gaps while we were identifying student needs as well. The bright spots were that we were able to create small groups of interventions based on our data and our intentionality there. And then our students' confidence and abilities in reading increased because they were excited to want to read and to be looking at the books that they were reading. We also trained over 1,000 employees in our district. So again, that came from very little examples and small piloting in our classroom at our own school with teachers, but then we made that larger scale to the district, again, with a partnership with Dallas ISD Reading Department with Summer School Program. We supported it through implementation at our teachers' own pace in our classrooms without tight perimeters, and then novel engineering PD at pilot teachers. The challenges, again, were the resources and materials. We really wanted to make sure that all of our teachers and students had access to books in order for them to annotate and within text. We also looked at the ability to deep dive within text at the students' reading levels and really figuring out how to balance that when we were reading on grade level materials when our students might not have been ready yet. So the bright spots were that we were awarded the novel engineering grant. We had a lot of teacher buy-in for novel engineering, and it was district-wide initiative, and you could see all of the excitement through the posts of social media from all across the district and in elementary schools. And it was really nice to see that the students were so engaged at so many different communities. So we learned a lot of lessons on the way as well. We found out that voice, drive, and initiation by teacher leaders really help move projects forward to really create that sense making and that buy-in. And it was best for us to go slower and deeper to create more buy-in. Once we showed proof that it was engaging and that students' reading skills were increasing, or that the students were talking about it to other teachers, that created excitement within our other teachers and within their parents. Like, what are you guys doing? We want to, what are y'all reading? And so it was exciting to see that connection between home and school as well. And then really conducting those empathy interviews of teachers identified a lot of stress, a lot of need, and a lot of challenges. So that was really helpful as well. The targets that we reached were really increasing student engagement and interest based on our student survey data. The growth in reading abilities, looking at our MAP data and our STAR data and our common assessment data, the excitement about the connections with people in the real world. So our parents coming back and saying, like, what are you doing? My child can read better. My child cares more about other kids, or like what's going on with my own life. And so that was the best testimony. One of the parents said, my kid can read better, and they know how to behave better because they care about others and they're checking for their own well-being. That was so great to hear at the end of the year. And then we met the needs of the teachers as we adjusted, and not only in piloted classrooms where teachers were ready to implement those novels and the curriculum. The other thing that we learned was we really needed to amplify our voices of our teacher and our students' perspective, and really our community's perspectives, to identify needs, knowledges, and challenges. And when we had that voice, what did we do, and how did we desegregate it by subgroups? Like, what were our African-American children saying? What were our Hispanic students saying? What did it look like for English language learners? What did it look like for teachers in 3-5 and teachers in grade 2? How could we support our community in different ways? So we really had a plethora of data to look at in order to make sure that we were meeting the needs of everybody. The next steps, had I stayed at the elementary schools, would have really been implementation of novel engineering, not only in the reading classrooms, but in science, math, social studies classrooms as well. During the summer, we did train teachers across different disciplines, and so that would have been at a larger scale for this year. However, with my change from elementary school to high school, my next steps are really thinking about using design thinking through empathy to identify similar needs. And in identifying those needs, whose voices am I listening to and how often? When it's such a bigger system, that is a challenge to try to figure out. And then how am I identifying and celebrating small wins within that larger system? So in a larger system, maybe teachers don't have similar common planning periods. They don't have, maybe the community is less involved because it's high school. So what does that look like, and how do we celebrate wins so that teachers can see other teachers doing great things, and identifying areas of need as well? We're going to be creating new targets. What do people want to see? How do we support them? How might we create solutions to the problems that we're seeing? And then how are we amplifying voices as well? We're modeling practice and role playing, and really helping teachers identify their own needs as well. And then how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to create solutions for the problems that we're seeing? What data are we continuously going to be gathering to make sure that we're supporting all of our community, and then begin the design thinking model again and again, because it's such a larger system and so many more children are impacted, that we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of everyone at different components, at different stages, and different needs. And that's going to be continuous. And so I am excited. I'm a little bit scared, to be honest, because it is going to be a challenge. I am learning the role of the principal at high school right now. And so looking at how to implement design thinking at such a larger scale is going to be, it's going to be something that I've never done before, and it's going to be something different. So I'm excited about doing the work, but it's going to be a lot of work. So yeah. So I wanted to thank you so much for the opportunity to really talk about hands-on learning, especially in reading through expeditionary learning and novel engineering.